is Gabriel. I work at OpenAI on developer experience. And today I want to talk about Codexmaxxing and how that's actually, to me, that's value maxing. I've had an incredible time working on Codex, really being what we call agent native, letting Codex do everything, asking Codex about nearly everything. And I just want to share some reflections and thinking about this. A lot of the examples will be oriented around Codex, but I hope some of the tips and also my mental model would be relevant for you. So this entire deck, quote unquote, you see is built with Codex in ChatGPT sites. I did it this afternoon while it's raining. I wanted to go out and get some food and it rained, so I instead stayed in the office to build this instead. So when you start thinking about value, and I have an economics background, I think of it as outcome divided by costs. Like value is really just the outcome you get, but at what cost? And I want to just share how we think about value here at OpenAI. One thing, for example, is let's say take the $20 USD ChatGPT Plus plan. We really want to bring intelligence to be available for everyone. We have a free tier where, of course, you don't have to even sign in with ChatGPT. You can already use it immediately. But of course, these things do cost money, so of course, your usage is rationed with the plan that you are on. But let's take the 20 USD plan as an example. One thing is that we're really proud of is that you have an efficient ensemble of models. So if we think about reasoning in code, we have Soul, Terra, and Luna. And here's the first practical tip. Not everything needs Soul. You could, for example, use Terra or Luna. One design pattern is, for example, using Soul to do the planning and investigation, and Luna for execution. And I'll show an example where I do that. Of course, it's more than just like hard STEM stuff, inventing new math and science. It's like image gen, for example, creating things that you previously couldn't. I think like some of the stickers that Brian made, for example, is image gen. I think it just gives us a capability that before I probably wouldn't have had such access to. Real-time voice, dictation. I really like dictation in the Codex app. If you didn't know about it, it's sort of powered by our models, and you can use it beyond the Codex app. So for example, if you go to settings, and you go here under voice, you can turn on dictation, and it sort of can be used elsewhere in your application. So you're trying to save for money. So last year I was getting married. I really wanted to cancel some of my SaaS subscriptions to save for the wedding. One thing I did cancel was one of the dictation things. And I'm really glad now, for example, this is sort of part of the ChatGPT plan. And I think just thinking about how multimodality and efficiency is part of that thesis of value. The next thing, of course, where value comes in is there's plugins. Plugins connect the agent to sort of external sources. And I think a lot of providers have this as a great ecosystem. And I think one part of the value is you don't have to always explain yourself. You could literally say, hey, Codex, there's this email that Rachel sent, the answers and the downloads. And of course, Codex will independently go through email, see how many people are there today, are there any dietary restrictions. Then it goes to the downloads, there's the attendee.csv. You can very proactively put these things together and give me a plan. And maybe with computer use, then it'll use my iPhone browser, iPhone mirroring, go to Grab, order some food, and maybe voila, we have some curry puffs and muffins for today. The other thing is, of course, just the use cases. It's just so much more than just building apps. So much more than just building applications. I think agents are really good at using the computer, and it's extended to sort of more computer-based work, creating documents, sheets, slides. Like this very thing example, it's a slide, but it's like a very interactive slide. I just thought about it, I want to just have this fundamental formula, how math professors, they sort of write on a chalkboard, and we can just elaborate from there. This is an example, images, computer use, and so forth. Sites in particular is really fun. It comes with a deck, it comes with a database, it comes with object storage, and it's also signed in with chat, and they'll come in relevant at the end of this presentation. And we want you to just work wherever you are. That's, I think, an important part of value. The desktop app is a command center for managing multiple agents. With the mobile app, you can start a new task or continue a task. So I'm commuting to work on the MRT, I fire off the task, then when I'm on the desk, back in my desk, I carry it on. Or I start the task on my desk, then I go up and queue for curry chicken noodles at Hong Lim Hawker Center, and then I can just keep track of what the agent is working on. So it's really stay connected with things as needed. I literally remember a day where I was out on the weekend and then someone needed a file. So with Codex Remote, I was able to get Codex to get the files from my downloads and send it via Slack. And at that time, our Slack connector didn't support files at the time. It does now, but at the time it didn't. So it's computer use to literally drag and drop the files into the Slack text composer. So yeah, I think it's great. And being on the cloud, I think it's going to be the next thing. I think other folks will probably talk about as well, is really letting these agents work where they should be. The other thing, of course, then is the outcomes. Like, did this tool actually get something useful? So I hope that this slide, for example, is an example of what is useful. So this was the literal prompt I gave chat this afternoon. Like, I'm going to give a talk today about Codexmaxxing. I just used dictation. I spoke to it. I was like weirdo since hiding in the corner of the office, whispering to my laptop. And it just sort of put this. I did a bit of more polishing, but the rough gist was that. And then another example was this thing that I was working on called Codexline. So I'm just going to toggle to that here. And it was something that I was thinking, could we build a open source collaborative Google Slides equivalent? And I wanted to use Sol as planning and Luna purely for execution. And then from there, we were able to get something. I'll talk more about that when it comes to pricing, but it's an example of what I built. So you can see, for example, the prompt over here. It was just hey Codex, I want to build a collaborative slide deck tool, blah, 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 blah. And then Codex would then interview me. And then after that, I told it okay, let's use Luna for as sub-agents, Valuemaxxing, and so forth. So I'll go into that a bit more, but this is what we're able to build. And because it's hosted on sites, we have a database, we have sign-in, we have authentication. So let's say you're looking to build internal applications, you're a small team, you want to migrate off a particular SaaS tool. I think this is one sort of approach. The broader point is sort of personalized software. I think if you want to really build a particular software that it sort of meets your needs, your equivalent workflows, you could build it, and it all just starts with talking to Codex. So as an example, let's see here, for example, I can create a new deck, Choir Blue, then you can change the color of the text and so forth. You can download as a PDF, you can sort of do presentation mode, and yeah, this is just something throwaway I built yesterday. I believe that only the planning took 1 percentage point of my plus plan, so this is a plus plan, weekly usage, and then the subsequent implementation took about 10% of the weekly usage. And I think this is quite fairly complex build. I'm trying to build something end-to-end, but of course you're doing an existing project, you're trying to do an existing refactor. I think the plus plan where you use Sol and Luna as a sort of combination could really extend your mileage. Now let's talk to my favorite part, costs. As Singaporeans, we're incredibly cost conscious. If you think about costs, there are two parts about costs. There's the time cost. How long did it take to get there? And also the economic cost. How much did I spend? So let's talk about the spending, the efficiency. At OpenAI, we deeply care about test time compute. We believe that you just put more thinking, you let the agent think more, you put more tokens, you will get a certain result. But at what cost? If you're going to let the agent spend 10 minutes trying to center a diff, are you going to do that? So this is a benchmark from DeepSeek 1.1. You can see for example, this is a benchmark where Opus 5 does better in 1 percentage point than 5.6 Sol. Of course, CI's confidence intervals aside. But I wanted to look at the costs. It's like $3 less. The output tokens are fewer, and the number of steps as well. So it's a time aspect. And you see what's incredibly underrated is 5.6 Luna Max. It's at 61 cents at 73 output tokens, and getting a 67% performance on DeepSeek 1.1. DeepSeek 1.1 is a notable benchmark because unlike the other SuiBench Pro families of benchmarks, it tries to build it from the ground up to be more realistic in the way it prompts and so forth. Actually, someone who used to come for Singapore, Daniel, who used to come for these events, he's actually interning there right now at DataCurve, the company that built this benchmark. The other thing is, so you have price times quantity, and you think about it. So maybe the model has a particular sticker price for the unit cost, but you also have the number of tokens it uses and times the number of attempts. So it's a formula, cost equals P times Q times N. P being the unit cost, Q being the quantity of tokens, and N being the number of attempts. So the number of attempts, I think one thing that's nice about most agents now is that they have a go mode. They try to get things done in one shot as much as possible. I think with a great model, you think this is something to think about. If it's a task that maybe it took a lot more tokens, maybe it took a lot more price, but you think holistically, in the grand scheme of things, you just need to do it once, or you have to do 10 times. You work with this maybe more efficient model, but you just has that less intelligence, it has the less sense of what you're really trying to ask for. And I think it spells back to talking to Codex, because I can just babble and yeah, and it can sort of understand implicitly what I'm trying to do, and it's sort of one-shot it to an extent, understanding what I'm doing. So that's great. Then unit costs. So you have Sol, Terra, Luna, blah, 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 blah. These models have a price point. And I think what's notable here was that we were able to use Sol to sort of improve our GPU efficiency, and we passed on that cost for to improve it for Terra and Luna, and then we sort of were able to cut the cost for Terra and Luna, and I believe it's like an ongoing promotion right now of Sol, if you use for Cell or like Open Router or one more provider, I can't recall, but yesterday these discounts. So we're also thinking very mindful about this, about the unit price. And of course then, tokens per attempt. One sort of conception here is that the single text, like hello world, my name is Gabriel, it could take different number of tokens depending on the provider. So the same number of characters isn't the same number of tokens. So here's one example from a sort of third-party analysis. They see, like, for example, for a certain like 2,888 character TypeScript file, the different models use different number of tokens. So I think that is just one thing to think about in that sort of cost accounting. Same thing as well, if you think of multilingual, English, Spanish, Portuguese, German, Mandarin, then you see the different models with the different tokenizers having a different number of tokens. So that's also relevant. And then here's another one where it's multilingual, multi-modal, and we will see again the OpenAI tokenizer using fewer tokens. So I think that's just something to take into account. I'm not saying here that, oh, we should start counting cents, like so 5 cents, 10 cents, counting peanuts. I think it's just something to account for when you see certain headline figures of costs. It's a little bit more nuance in that, and I think the accounting formula that I'm trying to put here puts that into perspective. So in the last 2 minutes and 54 seconds, I have a timer on my screen. I'm going to go through the example of me building Codex slide. So here I did the initial, how I did it was I built it with Codex. Then I gave Codex in the prompt the session ID. So I just looked into the thread and then made all these numbers. Like it came up with these numbers. So it was Codex inspecting itself, its own build in a different thread. So the initial investigation and planning took 2%. There was subsequent build and polishing that took 16%, and I have 82% left of my plus plan's weekly usage. I think if you think, I think it's a value judgment, and I did have an economics background, so it's depending on your budget constraint versus your preferences and at what point does the two curves intersect, and does it like etc, etc, etc. But I think like for something like this, where I'm trying to build a whole Google slide clone in like sort of in an hour, in 2 hours, and just experimenting for it to take sort of about 20% of a weekly plan, and if I assume I work a 5-day work week, then I think that sounds about right in what we are sort of trying to get achieved here. And of course, then we use the API pricing. I'm not sure if cash inputs were counted. Codex just came out with this. Here it came out with a figure of like $21.54. So I don't know if anyone here has had worked in like larger organizations with procurement, where you try to get some vendors to build something out. I think these figures would certainly be a few magnitudes above this $21.54. And I think it's so nice because you clearly have a value now here. $21.54. Was this really worth $21.54? Again, just something to think about. So yeah, cost breakdown and so forth here. And like even by the model, so like Luna, so I think it did account for cash input there. So the second part then is time. So I'm not too sure what this slide was talking about, but I believe it was about how what was elapsed wasn't me being hands-on with it. With agents being able to delegate, I can just like walk off, do something else, and that helps me really save time. And I believe the UX of the Codex app sort of allows for that. As a simple example, let's say I'm back in something new and I wanted to take a app shot. So I took this and I took an app shot, enable it. It's a screenshot, but it also includes like additional text here. So that's like one way of like me being very efficient in passing context to the model. So if you're on a Mac, press the 2 command keys, app shots. Very fun thing to do. And waiting time, less steering. So these are the examples. So while I was building it, I took that slash, I did a side command, and I said, the plan is way too wordy. And then it just simplified for me. And then here, we created a technical diagram. Again, this is all about like value to an extent, because your time is incredibly valuable. That is the most important thing. And with sub-agents, splitting time, so that's how it sort of like makes things faster. And let's see what else do we have. Repeating yourself. I hate repeating myself, so with memory, with agents.markdown, preferences, you can reduce repeating yourself. Oh wow, okay, that was my virtual desktop. Yeah, I'm running a few Codex sessions on the virtual cloud here. Okay, and I believe that's it. So what we have here today is value, outcome, and costs. And let me refresh this, and hopefully the final thing should come up, where it involves the sign in with chat. Okay, fantastic. So people asking for credits, in the last 5 minutes I added this. If you notice the slides are public, there is a QR code for it. I will go back to that. But you click here, it registers for your Codex credits. It uses your sign in with chat, so I know what your ChatGPT account is. But I mean, this it'll take a photo of this. You take a photo of the QR code, and then you'll be able to do it at the end of the slide. So yeah, thank you, and happy to take questions at the end.